Discover the incredible, heartwarming love between Oak and the unexpected giant princess, a life-changing tale like no other. In the heart of Maplewood, a small town where everyone knew each other's names and secrets, Oak worked tirelessly in his family's humble garage. The tools of his trade clanged and hissed in the midday light, a symphony of sweat and grease. He was a mechanic in his mid-30s with calloused hands, a tired smile, and a heart overflowing with determination. Every wrench he turned was a promise to his ailing mother and spirited younger sister that he would keep them safe. But the weight of economic struggles hung heavy. Then came the fateful day when everything changed. A colossal figure appeared on the horizon: Sophie, the giant princess. Standing well over 20 feet tall, she descended into Maplewood like a breath of spring wind. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her long, flowing hair caught the sunlight like a golden river. And when she smiled, her gentle face lit up with warmth, igniting whispers of admiration and fear. Some folks hid their children, pointing fingers and muttering about monsters. But in Oak's heart, a spark ignited a connection, a curiosity that tugged at his very core. The moment he saw Sophie's vulnerable expression, he felt an urge to reach out to her. While others turned their backs, Oak felt a peculiar kinship with her. They both shared a longing for acceptance in a world too quick to judge. With time, an unexpected friendship blossomed. They would sit among the towering sunflowers in Oak's backyard, where Sophie could bend low to listen as he shared stories about his grandfather's legacy, about hard work and resilience. Laughter mingled with the summer breeze, and hope bloomed within them both, coloring their days in vivid shades of joy. As their friendship deepened, however, Oak sensed a stirring in his chest, a jumbled mix of loyalty to family and blossoming feelings for Sophie. He did catch glimpses of her smile that sent his heart racing, questions swirling in his mind. The town began to see hints of what was possible: harvest festivals, laughter shared, culture at the forefront. Yet with this growth came an internal conflict as fierce as a storm. He wrestled with the desire for love against the need to protect what little they had. Then came the annual Maplewood Parade. The streets, usually alive with jubilance, took on a charged atmosphere. Sophie's towering figure commanded attention, but not in the way she wished. Muffled chatter erupted, some shouting encouragements while others hurled insults. Oak stood among the crowd, heart pounding like a jackhammer, ready to step forward as the tension peaked. Just then, an unforeseen incident unfolded, a moment that exposed the town's raw nerve. Sophie, inadvertently intimidating a child while trying to greet them, sent shockwaves through the assembled throng. Caught in the swirling emotions, Oak found himself teetering on the edge. Could he defend Sophie, the radiant giant whose presence filled him with an unexpected warmth, against the tide of fear and prejudice? Or would he slip back into the safety of silence, away from the turmoil threatening his family's fragile stability? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the whispers of resentment filled the air, Oak found hope glimmering dimly within him. Would he find the courage to challenge not just the townspeople's fears but his own? The clock ticked down, and as Sophie met his eyes wide, fearful, and searching, he knew the moment had arrived. Could love bridge the gap? When everything else stood divided, the festival teetered on chaos, and Oak's heart raced as he struggled to muster the strength to face the storm, uncertain of what lay behind the looming horizon. With a surge of adrenaline pumping through him, Oak felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. He glanced at Sophie, her towering figure cast in an almost ethereal glow, hair catching the fading sunlight. In that moment, she looked both majestic and vulnerable, embodying the mixed reactions that the townspeople had toward her. Oak could sense her anxiety radiating like heat waves in the air. The crowd was tense, faces twisted in fear, surprise, and confusion. Some turned away, unwilling to confront the extraordinary. Others leaned in, drawn like moths to a flame. He couldn't stand by any longer. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with resolve. "Hey!" Oak shouted, his voice breaking through the murmurs. As every head snapped in his direction, the fear in Sophie's eyes deepened, almost pleading for him to stand down. But he pressed on, staring straight at the townspeople who had treated her like an outsider. "This isn't a monster. This is Sophie. She is amazing." He felt vulnerability shoot through him as he spoke. Every word was like peeling back layers of himself, baring his heart to this crowd that had once been a safe space. A few gasps followed, some murmurs of disbelief rippling through the air. But there was something in Oak's voice that demanded attention. Maybe it was the fierce love he felt for Sophie, the desire to protect someone who had also been judged without a fair chance. "She has been here with us," he continued, gaining momentum as he remembered their shared laughter and those late-night talks amid the scent of sunflowers. "I've seen her heart. She cares. How many of you would let someone so different be your friend?" Oak felt boldness rising within him, and the hum of the crowd shifted into something like curiosity. Seconds felt like hours as he considered his words carefully. Instead of treating her like an outsider, we could learn from her, discover something new together. Why fear what we don't understand? As he finished, silence enveloped the throng. Every eye was locked on him, some with admiration, others with disbelief. But Oak was unyielding. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just defending Sophie. He was demanding recognition for everyone who felt out of place in Maplewood. Sophie's shoulders relaxed slightly, her expression shifting, as if her heart had found a little light. She slowly knelt down, bringing herself closer to Oak's level, her warm gaze reflecting appreciation. "A giant doesn't mean she is a monster," he added, stepping closer to her, empowered by her presence. "Everyone deserves a chance." The tension crackled and shifted. Hesitant murmurs turned into whispers of agreement. One man stepped forward, a local shopkeeper who had often been hard on her. "I'll give her a chance," he said, voice trembling, as if admitting a hard truth. "Maybe we were wrong." Oak could hardly believe his ears. What if this was the moment everything changed? The momentum of voices grew, and the crowd began to sway, their fear slowly transforming into curiosity. But just then, a chilling shout pierced the air. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Oak. She doesn't belong here." A familiar face emerged from the crowd. Daryl, a childhood friend turned adversary, storming toward them, eyes blazing with anger. Everything Oak had built up in that moment felt threatened, and uncertainty washed over him like a cold wave. Could their fragile acceptance withstand this tide of negativity? Oak's heart raced anew. Sophie looked at him, and he could see the fear creeping back into her features. This moment held the power to either shatter their newfound bond or deepen it. What would he say now? Faced with this new threat, Oak felt every ounce of his previous bravery wane. Would he find the strength to stand up for what was right? Not just for Sophie, but for himself? The answer loomed in the air as the crowd held its breath, waiting for his next move. Oak's heart thundered in his chest as he fixed his gaze on Daryl. The once friendly face he had known was now twisted into a mask of contempt. The crowd shifted uneasily, reassured by the familiar hostility that now filled the air like smoke. Oak's mind raced, thoughts colliding in a chaotic storm. "Daryl." Oak managed, his voice trembling but firm. "You don't understand. This is not about her being different, it's about who she is. Sophie is, she's incredible." Daryl took a step closer, his own hands clenched into fists. "Incredible? She is a freak. Look at her. You think she can just waltz into our town and be accepted? You've changed, Oak. This isn't you." The words struck him like arrows. Doubt seeped into his resolve. It hurt to hear that from someone who had shared his childhood. But then he caught a glimpse of Sophie, trying to curl into herself, her giant body trembling. That sight fired him up again. "Stop. Just stop," Oak shouted, surprising even himself with the intensity of his voice. "You're afraid of what you don't know. But that fear is what keeps us from seeing the beauty in differences." The townspeople listened, their faces a mix of anger and intrigue. A few stood tall, showing subtle signs of support, but many still shifted uncomfortably. Oak looked at them, searching for understanding. "This town is built on the strength of our community, not walls of exclusion. If you push her away, then you push me away too." There are so many out there who feel alone, who feel rejected. Don't we owe it to ourselves to be better? Oak felt the tide begin to shift, but Daryl's scorn remained firm. Being better? Or being a blind fool? Daryl challenged, his voice dripping with derision. You're just being naive. And if things go wrong, it's on you. Sophie's eyes widened, caught between their confrontation. Oak couldn't bear to see her distress. It's worth it, Sophie. You belong here. He yelled, hoping she would hear him over the noise. For a fleeting moment, Oak saw a flicker of affirmation in Sophie's gaze, a spark of hope kindling between them. But the fear inside him was undeniable. Could he really convince the crowd? Or would Daryl's hatred drown out their fragile bond? You're right. Oak's voice cracked with emotion. Maybe I am naive, but being scared leads to hate. Isn't it worth taking a risk for kindness? The air crackled with tension, suffocating both him and the townsfolk. Silence hung heavy as they tried to process this new perspective. All around him, Oak could feel the balance teetering, a delicate scale between compassion and prejudice. Then, with resolve blooming in him like the first flowers of spring, Oak took a step forward, trusting his heart to lead. If you want a monster, then I'll be the one to stand up against it, he declared, facing Daryl with fierce determination. Suddenly, from the back of the crowd, a voice broke through the tension. Listen to him. Someone shouted. We've all felt like outsiders at some point. Oak's heart soared. Had some of them finally begun to embrace the light? The whispers continued, slowly building into a chorus of voices. But just then, Daryl lunged forward, his expression turning from anger to something darker, something more dangerous. His intentions were becoming clear. Would Oak and Sophie be prepared for what he would do next? In that moment, Oak realized he would have to not only fight for Sophie's acceptance but for his own beliefs too. As Daryl approached, fists raised, Oak could feel time slow. This confrontation could either forge their unity or sever their chance at a better future. What was he willing to sacrifice in order to protect not just Sophie, but the hope of acceptance for everyone? The moment hung there, a breath away from chaos. What would he do now? Oak felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins as he clenched his fists, his heart pounding like a drum. He stood his ground, determined not to let fear dictate the outcome of this moment. Sophie's wide eyes were locked on him, filled with an agonizing mix of hope and terror. He took a deep breath. Daryl, Oak shouted, voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. You're the one who doesn't get it. There's nothing monstrous about Sophie. She is courageous and kind. The only monster here is your hatred. For the first time, Oak saw the crowd's expressions shift. A few people exchanged glances, their expressions slowly softening. It was a flicker of change, but sometimes all it took was a flicker to start a fire. He felt hope ignite within him. Daryl's face contorted in rage, his fists tightening even more. You think you're some hero standing up for a freak? You're making a huge mistake, Oak. You have no idea what she's capable of. True, Oak replied, his voice rising, cutting through Daryl's fire. But I know what I'm capable of too. I'm not afraid of her or what she looks like. I'm afraid of losing my friend because of ignorance and fear. Oak took a step forward, feeling the ground firm beneath him. The real mistake is thinking that difference equals danger. It's our refusal to understand each other that creates monsters. Sophie shifted slightly behind him, reassured by his words but still scared. Oak could see her trembling, a quiet giant caught in a storm. He turned to her, speaking softly, Sophie, it's okay. I won't let them hurt you. I promise. The crowd held its breath, hanging on his every word. Then he remembered something. Do you remember the last town fair? How we laughed and danced together. It wasn't about how we looked, but who we were. Let us bring that spirit back. A few voices whispered in agreement, but Daryl wasn't done. You really think talking will change anyone's mind? He sneered, stepping closer, now mere feet away. You're playing with fire, Oak. Oak looked Daryl in the eyes, unyielding. Then let us see who gets burned. A gasp rippled through the crowd as Oak's challenge hung in the air. For a heartbeat, it felt like time had frozen. The fear of confrontation was palpable, but so was the pulse of solidarity beginning to grow among the spectators. A woman from the crowd stepped forward, her voice trembling but powerful. Yes, right. We all felt different. We should be better than this. More voices joined in, spurred by her courage. Give her a chance. You can't judge someone without knowing them. The tide was turning. Oak felt a swell of determination replace the fear in his gut. It was a small army of hearts in motion, pushing back against the darkness. Daryl's face twisted in disbelief, fury boiling over. You're all fools for believing this, he spat. She'll destroy everything. Not if we stand together, Oak replied, glancing at Sophie, who was now standing taller, a little less timid. But then he heard the low murmurs of dissent, those lingering doubts within the crowd. Still unsure whether to support him or retreat into the safety of conformity. Oak was aware that Daryl was a formidable adversary, and had planted seeds of fear that could take root if he didn't act fast. Come on everyone, Oak called out, his heart racing. We can choose community over fear. We can embrace differences instead of shunning them. Just as he thought hope might be within reach, Daryl took another step closer, a cold glint in his eyes. You're going to regret this, he hissed. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them, ripping through the moment as the crowd gasped collectively. Oak turned just in time to see a massive wooden beam, part of the village's old sign, toppling ominously toward Sophie. Time slowed again as Oak's instincts kicked in. He leaped forward, but in that instant, everything blurred into chaos. What would he do to protect her? Would this be the moment that would define their fight for acceptance? Or would it be the start of something tragic? The crowd held their breath, staring, wide-eyed as the beam fell. In that split second, Oak realized he was ready to put everything on the line. Would he risk it all for Sophie, or would he be too late? With a surge of instinct, Oak lunged forward, stretching every muscle in his body. He could almost feel the weight of the beam as it fell, threatening to shatter the moment he had fought so hard to create. It was loud, the kind of sound that would echo in his mind for days to come. Sophie's scream sliced through the air, but Oak couldn't hear anything else. It was all a blur, the wooden beam, the whispers of the crowd, and the terror in Sophie's eyes. He reached her, desperate to push her out of harm's way, but time felt slow and the world moved around him in a frantic frenzy. In one swift motion, he threw himself against her, barely managing to deflect the beam just enough to avoid a tragedy. The impact sent them both crashing to the ground. Oak could feel the wind knocked out of him. His ribs ached and his vision swam under the swirl of dust. For a moment, everything was silent. Oak lay tangled with Sophie, hearts racing and breaths intermingling in the aftermath of that near disaster. He opened his eyes and the chaos of the crowd around them blurred into focus. People were gasping, some were covering their mouths in shock, and others rushed in closer, concern etched in their expressions. Sophie looked at him, eyes wide and shimmering with tears. Oak, she whispered, voice trembling, as if afraid the spell of safety might break. I'm here, he breathed, barely recovering from the response of his heart. I'm right here. Slowly rising, he could see the trembling fear still hanging in the air. The crowd began to murmur, uncertainty filling the space where solidarity once bloomed. Oak could sense the doubt creeping back into their hearts. Oak, are you okay? Sophie asked, her worry radiating like warmth against the creeping chill of fear. He nodded, though the pain in his ribs shot a reminder of the danger they had just faced. We need to show them we're okay, Sophie. They need to see that we can stand together. Daryl stood frozen, his face pale, shock mixed with rage. What have you done? He shouted, voice trembling. You think that will change anything? You've just made it worse. No, Daryl, Oak replied, standing tall despite the pain. What you fear isn't the truth. It's ignorance that creates monsters, not Sophie. The crowd shifted again, some faces softening, others still caught in a web of fear. Oak realized they were at a tipping point. We just faced danger together. If we can come together to protect instead of tear apart, then nothing, not even fear, can keep us from being who we are meant to be. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted the woman from before, the one who had dared to speak out. She stepped forward again, determination strong in her gaze. Oak's right. Each of us has battled our own struggles, but together, we can uplift each other instead of pushing one another down. More voices began to join hers, emboldened by the raw emotion of what just transpired. We want to embrace difference. We won't be afraid anymore. Oak felt the energy shift, the tide rising against the chaos. Heart pounding, he turned to Sophie, whose eyes glowed with newfound strength. She was no longer just a giant with power. She was a beacon of hope. But then, just as the crowds rallied together in a show of support, Oka's heart sank. From the fringes of the gathering, a figure emerged. Daryl raised a broken piece of the beam, wild rage shaking his fist. "This isn't over," he roared, the bitterness crackling in his voice. Oak felt the air freeze as he realized Daryl was about to turn the momentum back, and it could all unravel in an instant. Would they have the courage to face what lay ahead, together? Would love stand firm against this hatred, or was it just the beginning of a deeper clash? As Daryl took a menacing step forward, Oak felt his resolve hardening. What would he risk to protect Sophie and the future they might seize in this moment? Oak's heart raced as he watched Daryl advance, the makeshift weapon glinting ominously in the fading light. He shifted his weight, placing himself in front of Sophie, instinctively guarding her from the impending confrontation. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric, leaving a taste of fear on his tongue. "Daryl, stop," Oak called, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. "This isn't the way. We can't let anger guide us. We just fought together. We can do better than this." But Daryl's expression was a storm cloud, dark and unyielding. "You're a fool, Oak. You think you can change how people see her? They'll never accept someone like her." His eyes darted between Oak and Sophie, hatred bubbling just below the surface. The crowd was on edge, breaths held tight. Oak could see the apprehension written on their faces, some leaning forward, eager for the conflict, while others turned away, bracing for violence. Sophie clutched Oak's arm, her fingers trembling, and he could hardly believe the strength he found in her fragile frame. He looked into her eyes and saw both fear and a fierce determination. "Oak," she whispered, "what if he's right? What if they never know?" He interrupted, meeting her gaze with unwavering conviction. "You are not a monster, and neither are we. It's time to show them who you really are." Sophie took a deep breath, her confidence wavering but bubbling just beneath the surface. The voices of support around them began to rise again, rallying behind Oak's call for solidarity. "We stand together," they shouted, and a wave of courage rippled through the crowd like a rising tide. Daryl's grip tightened around the beam, and for a moment, it looked like he might strike out. Oak felt his stomach churn, that gut-wrenching panic rising as he sensed his worst fear, that all they had fought for would shatter in an instant. In that fraught moment, something inside him snapped into place. "I won't let you hurt her, Daryl," Oak declared, his voice steady and strong. "You may think your hatred gives you power, but it's actually your weakness. This ends here." The crowd fell silent, the collective breath of what felt like 1,000 held moments drawing back like a wave. Oak's words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in hope, vibrating against the fear that threatened to engulf them all. Sophie squeezed Oak's hand tightly, a silent affirmation that they were in this together. A piece of the wood creaked in Daryl's grasp, but Oak didn't waver. He stood tall, emotions swirling, fighting against the urge to back down. With each second that passed, Daryl's resolve weakened, the rage faltering before the undeniable bond of courage that Oak and Sophie displayed. The cries of support from the crowd began to break through, drowning out the malice. "We won't live in fear. We won't silence hope." Then a slight shift in Daryl's stance caught Oak's eye. His features morphed, eyes flickering between emotion and confusion. In that fragile moment, it seemed like the tide might change. But just as hope surged in Oak's chest, a shout sliced through the air from the back of the crowd. A figure, cloaked and shadowy against the twilight, moved forward with imposing authority. "What's going on here?" The sudden voice sent shockwaves through the group. Oak's heart sank, a new threat looming ominously as every face twisted to look at the newcomer. Who were they? And what did this mean for Oak and Sophie in this tenuous moment of unity? As the crowd turned to face the figure, all Oak felt was a tremor of uncertainty. Would this stranger bolster their courage or upend everything? Oak's heart raced as he turned to face the shadowy figure that loomed behind him, an air of authority enveloping them like a dark cloak. The crowd's energy shifted, their calls of support fading into an anxious murmur, as if collectively holding their breath, waiting for this new player to make their move. The figure stepped closer, revealing a strong jaw and piercing eyes that glowed even in the dim light. "Who do you think you are?" the stranger demanded, their voice like thunder, commanding and fierce. "What kind of fool's game is this?" Daryl straightened, momentarily distracted, his grip on the makeshift weapon wavering. Oak seized the moment. "We don't want any trouble. This is about standing together, not tearing each other apart," he said, his voice echoing with urgency. But the figure wasn't listening. Instead, they focused on Daryl, their presence demanding attention. "You think violence will solve anything? Look around you. There are lives at stake. This is no time for hatred." Oak felt a flicker of hope. The stranger's words held a truth that echoed in the hearts of every person present. He could see it in the crowd. Faces that had once been clouded with fear now sparked with the beginnings of resolve. "What's your name?" Daryl barked, his glare hardening. "I am Kale," the figure said simply, their stance unyielding. "And you would do well to listen. You're only making things worse." Kale's piercing gaze shifted to Sophie. You shouldn't be here in the first place," they said with venom laced throughout. Oak felt Sophie flinch beside him. For a moment, all his previous courage felt fragile, a thin glass ready to shatter. "No," Oak asserted, stepping forward once again, uncertain but driven by need. "Sophie is brave, and she has every right to be here. We can fight for change, but it has to be together." The air hung heavy, the weight of Kale's stare pinning Oak in place. He felt the crowd's eyes shifting back to him, all their hopes and fears resting on his next words. "Choose your side wisely," Oak Kale warned, their voice quieter now yet still charged. "Do you wish to stand with a girl who will never be accepted? Or will you fight for those who truly matter?" Sophie's breath hitched at Kale's words. Oak turned to her, seeing the uncertainty flicker in her eyes, confusion mixed with desperation. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We matter. All of us." Before Kale could respond, the crowd erupted. The voices that once shouted in fear shifted into a new rhythm, a chorus growing louder. "Together! Together! Together!" Daryl scowled, frustration etched deep into his features. "You want to win this," he shouted back. But the united voices were too powerful to deny, a wave washing over the conflict like a cleansing storm. Kale's expression softened just a fraction, and for the briefest moment, Oak thought they might understand. "This isn't finished," they said, before stepping back into the shadows, leaving a lingering tension in their wake. As the crowd quieted, the reality of the moment settled heavy on Oak's shoulders. He felt the heat of Sophie's body next to him, a challenge to the fear that had gripped them all. "What now?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling, not just from fear but with the weight of unspoken possibilities. Oak glanced around, knowing the path forward would not be easy. "Now we find a way to show them what unity can accomplish," he replied, determination echoing in his tone. "We're not just fighting for acceptance, we're fighting for each other." But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that Kale's return was inevitable. Would the stranger become an ally or a host of new problems? A chilling voice in the back of Oak's mind asked if the words of unity would be enough against the unseen threats lurking in the depths of their community. A chilling wind blew past, hinting at conflicts yet to come. Oak took a deep breath, the chill still wrapping around him like a shroud. The sound of the crowd swelled and faded, and he felt the weight of uncertainty pressing heavily on him. Willing away his doubts, he turned back to the group of people standing together, united in a way they hadn't been before. They had a spark, a flicker of hope, and he wasn't about to let it fade. "Listen up," he called out, raising his voice above the murmurs. "What we just did, that's only the beginning. Kale's warning might have some truth. There are powers at play that we don't fully understand yet." He paused, gauging their reactions, seeing the fear mix with determination in their eyes. "But if we don't stand together, we'll lose everything we have fought for." Sophie stepped closer, her eyes wide with a mix of admiration and concern. "What if Kale comes back? What if they bring more people? Then we stand our ground," Oak replied, steadying his voice as he locked eyes with her. "Fear can't lead us now. We can be stronger together than they ever expected." Daryl, still scowling, clenched his fists. "What do you propose then, Oak? We form a committee while they laugh at us from the shadows?" "No." Oak shook his head. We take action. We show them that we're serious. We need to gather everyone, every supporter, every ally. We make them see. We make them hear us. The crowd began to shift, murmurs turning into discussions, small groups forming around key ideas. Oak felt the energy ripple through them like a rising tide. It was intoxicating. Let us organize a meeting. We'll lay out our demands, we'll be visible, Sophie suggested, a new fire igniting in her eyes. They can't ignore us if we all stand together in one place. Good idea, Oak agreed, surprised how quickly they were rallying together. We'll need to plan carefully. We'll map out the areas we know are safe, and the ones that are, well, less welcoming. Daryl still looked skeptical, arms crossed tightly. And if that doesn't work? If they come after us again? Oak met his gaze. Then we're ready. We'll be a united front. And remember, the moment we show that we're afraid, that's when they win. We can't give them that power. As Oak spoke, voices rose around him, brewing excitement. It wasn't just chatter anymore. It was a roadmap to hope. The tension that had previously enveloped them started to dissipate, replaced by a simmering urge to act. Sophie squeezed his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. We will show them what we stand for. And it'll be more than just words. Oak maintained eye contact with her, feeling a rush of affection between them. Maybe this was more than a fight. It was a chance to forge something real, something worth rallying behind. Suddenly, a loud noise shattered the moment. A distant chant echoed through the streets, growing closer with each heartbeat. Oak's muscles tensed, instinct kicking in. What is happening? He whispered, scanning the crowd. As the chorus of voices drew nearer, panic flared in the eyes of some. It's them. They're coming. Someone shouted, backing away. Oak felt the adrenaline rush through him. No. Stay together. He shouted, raising his arms to bring the fraying group closer. The chant grew louder, urgent and demanding. Sophie's expression turned serious, the fire still alive in her eyes, but now mixed with a fear he couldn't ignore. Oak, we can't let them scatter. We have to hold the line. He nodded, heart pounding in response to the growing chaos. This was it. The moment they would either crumble under pressure or rise as one. As the edge of the crowd broke apart, Oak knew he had to act fast. Everyone focus. We are not alone, we are a community. But as he spoke, a shadow loomed in the distance, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Kale was watching from somewhere, lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And there, on the edge of uncertainty, the battle for their future truly began. Oak's heart pounded as he watched the crowd begin to fracture. Shouts pierced the air, and fear danced across the worried faces around him. In that moment, he knew he couldn't let panic set in. Listen to me. We are not afraid, he shouted, forcing every ounce of confidence into his voice. The words tumbled out, filling the space between him and the terrified crowd. They want us divided, that's how they win. He scanned the faces, desperate to fan the flames of unity. Sophie stepped forward, her voice steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. We gather together. We'll protect each other. No one stands alone. Her words reverberated, a lifeline thrown to the hesitant. Oak could see it, the hesitation. The fear that gripped each person's heart began to melt away. People began to hold hands, forming a human chain that pulled them closer together. It felt like one body now, hearts beating as one. But just as hope sparked, the chant reached a deafening crescendo, and from the shadows emerged figures draped in dark uniforms, their faces hard and determined. It was them. Kale's gang. Oak felt the color drain from his face. A surge of disbelief coursed through him. They were here. They really were here. Panic threatened to spiral, but he wouldn't let it. Not now. Not when they had come so far. Stand firm, he yelled, not just for himself but for everyone. We're not just victims. We are fighters. A wave of solidarity rushed through the crowd, their determination igniting against the encroaching darkness. The uniformed figures advanced, chanting with commanding voices, their words a cloud of hostility. Oak's mind raced. We can't let them intimidate us, he thought. We must show them our strength. Raise your voices. Let them know we are here. Oak encouraged, his own voice blending into the rising din. The group joined in, a chorus of defiance blending with the chants of hostility. Then a shout, loud and clear, broke through the chaos. "They might have numbers, but we have heart." It was Daryl, his face now lit with fierce determination. His words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave, energizing, liberating. Oak felt it then, a shift. It wasn't just about fighting back. It was about revealing their spirit. They transformed from a frightened mass into a proud community, each person holding their ground, feeling the weight of support from those around them. Sophie looked up at him, her eyes reflecting unwavering resolve. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for each other." There was fire in her words, and it shot straight into Oak's heart, stirring something deep within him. Love, loyalty, and a fierce determination. The two groups drew closer, the tension palpable as they prepared to clash. "We stand together," Oak shouted, squeezing Sophie's hand. "No matter what happens, we will not let fear win." Just as the first shouts of confrontation were hurled from both sides, Oak caught a glimpse of movement, dark shapes flanking the main group. "It's a setup," he thought, studying the scene around him. He had seen it before. They were surrounded. Panic threatened to ignite again, but it was fostered into resolve instead. "Hold the line," he commanded, and his voice rose above the clash, emboldening each heart. Yet, beneath the chaos, his insides twisted with a nagging worry. Had they underestimated the shadow looming over them? The words Cale once echoed whispered back to him. Was this truly the right moment to stand? As the groups only inches apart prepared to charge, Oak felt the stakes rise. What if the strength of their unity crumbled under the weight of impending confrontation? And so, they stood on the edge of destiny, heartbeats sinking, breaths held, and the world around them trembling with tension. The moment of truth was here, but as he looked around at his friends, Oak knew he had to make a decision that could change everything. Did they still have the heart? Would it be enough? Oak's mind raced as he surveyed the chaos unfolding before him. The tension in the air wrapped around them like a heavy fog, mixing fear with courage. He felt every heartbeat pulsating through the crowd, a collective thrum of determination. The dark figures stood ready to unleash their hostility, but the people of Maplewood stood firm, ready to show their strength. "This is our town," Oak shouted, his voice breaking through the mounting aggression, loud and unwavering. "We will not be afraid. We will not be divided." Sophie's grip on his hand tightened, her presence a powerful anchor amidst the swirling uncertainty. The crowd began to echo Oak's words, voices rising in a powerful chant. "We stand together. We stand together." The rhythmic call surged through the air, carrying with it a degree of hope that felt tangible, almost alive. Oak glanced around at the friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had come together under one banner. Like flowers braving harsh conditions, they had stood through the storm, and now the petals were unfolding. With an adrenaline-fueled rush, Oak took a step forward. "If you think we can be turned against each other just because we're different, think again. We are not monsters. We are neighbors, and we are stronger together." He spotted Daryl, whose earlier aggression seemed to have transformed into something softer, curiosity, maybe even a smattering of respect. For the first time, Daryl stood shoulder to shoulder with others, facing the darkness. It gave Oak hope that perhaps even the deepest divides could be bridged with understanding. Just as the tension swelled to its peak, Cale's voice sliced through the air, commanding attention from both sides. "You think you can win with just words? You think love overcomes hate?" The figures behind Cale swayed like a wall, unyielding and fierce. "That's precisely the point," Oak replied, not backing down. "We won't fight hate with more hate. We fight with our voices, our hearts, and our commitment to each other." The crowd erupted again in a united chant. "We will not back down." In a moment that felt electric, the two groups took a tentative step towards each other. Oak could see doubt flicker in the eyes of some of Cale's followers, uncertainty sparking as they looked at Sophie, at Oak, at the people who stood side by side. "It's not about monsters or heroes," Sophie shouted, standing tall, her voice carrying a warmth that contrasted the heavy tension around them. "It's about understanding and showing kindness. We have all faced our own fights. Let us stand together and create a world where love triumphs over fear." Every voice that followed her echoed her sentiment, blending into a harmonious wave of unity. Oak's heart swelled. tears threatening to spill as he felt the strength of their support wrap around him like a warm embrace. Kale's expression faltered, confusion setting in. The once mighty presence began to waver against the overwhelming force of community. It was as if something had shifted, an invisible line drawn in the sand. "That's enough," Kale yelled, but the chant only grew louder, drowning out the urgency, mixing chaos with hope. "Well, here we are," Oak disrupted the moment, laughing through tears, courage bubbling inside him. "It seems we've caught ourselves in a bit of a face-off. But patience and love can dismantle even the darkest barriers." In that instant, he felt confidence rising within him. "Maybe it's time to put aside our differences and find common ground," Oak suggested, glancing at Daryl, who nodded, loosening his tense posture. "Yes," he added, inspired by his own strength. "We don't have to agree on everything, but we should embrace each other. Bring me your doubts, I'll bring mine. Let love be the cradle for our community, instead of fear." The tension shifted once more, like storm clouds parting to reveal the sun. One by one, Kale's followers began to murmur, glancing at their leader, then back at Oak and Sophie. Daryl stepped up beside Oak, his voice ringing out. "If we can find our footing alongside those that are different, we can build a better future. We've fought this fight alone for too long. It's time to face the truth. Every one of us deserves to belong." And just like that, a ripple of agreement washed over Kale's side. Hearts slowly thawing from the ice of ignorance, no longer able to ignore the pulse of camaraderie that surrounded them. Oak felt the warmth of solidarity wrapping around them all, amplifying their voices as one. The once strained divide was now a bridge, a path drawn in the sand, etched with understanding. Kale, still poised with defiance, blinked, caught in the moment of shifting tides. "You think you can change everything?" "Yes," Oak declared, his heart soaring with passion. "We can and we will. Together." At last, the shadows in the crowd began to retreat. Hearts peeled back layers of doubt, confronting their fears head-on. Compassion thawed the coldness, and acceptance became a fierce light against the dark. Oak turned to Sophie, whose eyes were glassy with tears of joy. She beamed, her towering presence now one of warmth and acceptance, a giant among hearts. "Thank you, Oak. Thank you for believing in us." "I believe in us all," he replied, the truth echoing in his heart. The sound of their adoration was testament to a love that could shape their world anew. The crowd began to disperse, but it was no longer just fear and agitation that hung in the air. It was hope, solidarity, and the promise of tomorrow. As Oak walked hand in hand with Sophie, the expansive sky above glimmered with stars, a shining tattoo of infinite possibilities reflecting the transformation of Maplewood. Now, friends, as we wrap up this incredible journey of love, transformation, and acceptance, don't miss out on what's next. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the upcoming exclusive stories with heart and hope. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this beautiful ending. And share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of togetherness. This is the moment to let your voices be heard. We're just getting started.